Ladies and gentlemen, in case you were not aware, the current strongest booming chess country on earth is without a doubt India. They have a ton of grandmasters literally being minted every couple of weeks at this point, and they have the youngest class of players age 14, 15, 16, 17 that are all seemingly unstoppable on their quest to 2700. Guys like Eric Geisy, Nihal Sarin, D. Gukesh, and many more. I mean, that's just honestly to name a few. The person that we're covering in today's video is none other than Pragnananda Ramesh Babu. He is a teenager who is just 16 years old, and recently he was all over the news because he defeated Magnus Carlsen. He became the youngest player to beat Magnus since Magnus became world champion, and it wasn't an online rapid game that they play in those tour events. But right now, the world, and specifically in India, is buzzing about Pragg. And Pragg just won the Reykjavik Open. The Reykjavik Open is a tournament held every year in Iceland. Beautiful venue, 9 rounds, with many, many strong players. And in this video, we're going to celebrate his victory. We're going to take a look at his playing style. Yeah, I'm going to show you 5 of his games. Timestamps are in the video player. Let's get crack-a-lackin'. And then obviously we'll talk about what this means moving forward. Shout out to India, by the way. I mean, obviously the Indian audience is massive on YouTube, especially in chess. I think for me it's United States, and then it's very close between Germany and India for second place. I mean, you guys support your players, right? So the very first game, and we're going to look at it actually from Pragg's perspective every game. This is the first round of the Reykjavik Open. Pragg begins with Knight C6 Sicilian. Nowadays, players are playing this basically all the time because Magnus played it all the time himself. And Pragg doesn't go for the Magnus Sveshnikov. He plays the classical Sicilian, the Rauser variation, the Richter-Rauser variation, which is very confrontational. You'll notice that Black has put 2 center pawns to block his bishops. That's because his bishops are just going to go boop and boop. And actually, this is completely fine. As cagey and silly as this looks, it's totally reasonable. And believe it or not, Black actually takes in the middle with a pawn. So Black uses this massive pawn formation to defend his king. He doesn't even always castle. Sometimes you just sort of leave the position exactly as is. Now, White, despite not having the bishop pair, having just given it away, has a lot more space, right? Has a lot more space and is kind of ready to meet wherever the Black king goes. Queen e3, queen c7, and Pragg throws the b pawn forward, kicking out the knight, and now playing the move a5. So again, Pragg is doing this while keeping his king in the middle. In many ways, the fact that White castled and has moved his king sort of gives you an example and sort of a blueprint of where to attack in this position. But all good players play on multiple sides of the board and don't just belligerently run forward. So Pragg plays queen c5. This is just a good temporary move, paralyzing the white knight to the queen, and now I play a4. The idea of a4 is maybe I will play a3, but the other idea is you can't go to b3 anymore, so you can't play this move, right? And that's important. I'm just controlling space in front of your king. I have a constant threat and lingering danger, and now, as you play bishop e2, I'm actually going to castle my king, and it looks like my king is kind of weak, right? But here, I play king h8. How exactly will you be getting to my king? Can I ask? Well, White plays rook f3. White, Mr. Cherniak, obviously, doesn't like where Pragg has put his king, but Pragg has correctly evaluated that even though the king is completely abandoned, kind of like when we leave our puppy at home in his playpen, he'll be all right because he's well trained. So Pragg goes back to g8. He's like, I'm back home now. First, let me target this pawn. If I need be, he didn't even have to be honest. Even back here, Pragg could have played a move like f5, which is just a really savage move, with the intention of putting a bishop on f6. And, if White tries to play rook f3, rook g3, there's really nothing. The king is totally okay. This diagonal is very strong. Pragg is a better dog owner than myself. He comes home a little bit faster, to greet the king. And, White has to play defense. Rook ac8. So he kind of shuffles both rooks over and now says, you know what? My dark squared bishop is not very good. So bishop d8, bishop b6. I'm going to reroute my dark squared bishop this way. Knight e2, a3. There we go. There we go. The provocation, bishop b5. Look at him lining up his bishops on that side of the board. Here, White plays c4. And Pragg is 26-24 GM. He knows that when en passant is possible, he should probably play it. Position explodes here as White plays like this, and now queen b4. And the diagonals are just getting really, really unpleasant here for white, who very promptly gets overwhelmed. Material is lost, and Pragg converts this position with complete ease. He targets the pawn, he wins the pawn, and gives a check, centralizes his bishop, and the game makes it to the time control, but black promptly resigns after Pragg sacrifices the rook for the knight, threatening promotion. The king cannot come to b2. I don't know how Pragg felt in this game, but this is one of the most effortless defeats of a 2200 I've ever seen in my life. All right, I would have had to work 10 times harder. And I might have not even won, So that's how we start the tournament. Now, we got to jump into the middle of the tournament because we're not just going to be playing 2200s the whole time, right? So we're going to slowly improve our opposition. Here we're playing Pierre-Laurent Paoli. That's, don't even, how do you say sorry? Désolé? Is that how you say sorry? I don't know. French-speaking audience, let me know. Is that how you say sorry? I think it might be. Anyway, he's playing a strong French IM, is Pragg, and this is, I think, the 4th round of the tournament. This time we have a Rogozin. So this is, now Pragg has the white pieces. He plays queen a4 check, forces knight c6, and we have a ultra trendy line here where black just tries to break out of the middle with e5. h3, this is a good move to prevent anything from developing to g4. This bishop now struggles. It can't really develop anywhere. Black plays the move a6, and now Pragg does what 2600 GMs do. He plays a move that's not popular at all. He goes for an idea in this game that's extremely unique. Like, on the one hand here, you would think white should just play rook e1, rook d1, maybe a3 I know is a move. d5 and e4 also just looks very appetizing to take some space. Pragg does what seems like it shouldn't make any sense, which is clearing the center and just seemingly no advantage. Plays bishop d2. Now here, black should play b5. Black should play b5. I don't know why black did not play b5. This looks really okay. But maybe black did not like f4, e4, etc. Instead of that, black plays queen e7 with the intention of stopping the move f4. Because white, in a perfect world, would get to play f4, e4, e5, and just win the game. But queen e7 prevents f4 because you're going to take the knight. And now the bishop can't take because this comes with check, so obviously you can't do that. And if this happens, well, I shove my knight in your face, and, horses are majestic. But not when they're... All right, please disregard that. The system just made a sound. That almost never happens when I record videos. It's Windows. It's Windows telling me... it's a Windows update. I mean, it's just, they harass you beyond belief. Every time I click pause updates for 7 days, it's like... it's honestly like I get reminded again in 1 day. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. That is why you cannot take on... you cannot play f4 because bishop takes c3. So, since Pragg can't play f4 because of bishop takes c3, he plays f4, allowing bishop takes c3 and king h2. Yeah. This is how you know you're dealing with a real gangster. Pragg says, I can give you the pawn. I can even give you the pawn with check. I don't care. My king is safe. My bishops are gorgeous. All right, I'm going to play rook f3, rook g3. That's exactly what I'm going to do. You play queen c6 attacking my bishop. Who feels unpleasant here, huh? Who's going to feel unpleasant? The guy down a pawn or the guy whose entire existence is rattling him to the core? I mean, he's shaking, right? So, h6. Now I'm going to bring my other rook. You haven't really done anything. And now Pragg plays a cool call. He plays queen b1, just unpinning himself. We have bishop e6. The thing is, again, black probably should have gone for something like b5 because bishop f6 now is met with queen f6, and you're fine. Pragg played queen b1, obviously, to try to do something on the c file. Pragg could have, I think, been faster, and I think b3 queen b2 was what, obviously Stockfish always has something to say. But he does it this way, and here black allows the pawn structure to be compromised. And Pragg doesn't look back. I guess black just really felt stuck, so he played this move and said, I don't really care about the damaged pawn structure. Pragg's like, nah, trust me, dude, you really should care. You should care, because your king is now completely cut off, and now I play the cool, calm, and collected queen c1. Who guards this? The king? That's adorable. Because now when I'm going to move my bishop, my rook is going to get to h4. And the craziest thing is, your bishop is also hanging. So I'm attacking a lot of stuff. You play bishop e2. Now we have bishop d3, queen e5. This can't be taken because of various threats on the king. So here, Pragg decides to end the game in style by playing queen c4, and the game is over. The game is over because this is a fork of the queen and that square, and after queen c4, rook h5 is made. So black, good sport, didn't resign, actually allows himself to be checkmated, which is, you know, that's nice. A couple of moves ago, by the way, just so you understand how powerful the threat here was, it was an absolutely beautiful opportunity after bishop takes d3, queen takes h6, sacrificing the queen. So black's major mistake was obviously allowing the pawns to be compromised, but this was all part of a more savage approach by Pragg to just sack a pawn with check and line up these beautiful pieces. I mean, incredible. 4 pieces, 5 pieces playing in the game, and black just never got going. That's how it really felt. I mean, you look back at this game, black's rooks made one move between the two of them. I mean, there was castles, but one move. Pragg got all the pieces involved and wins the game in very, very exciting style with rook takes h5. So a very nice win by Pragg here in round number 4. We just saw round number 1. This is round number 4. And now the players are, I mean, they're just getting stronger and stronger because Pragg is winning or drawing every game, right? So in the next game, this is his 6th round game against Abhimanyu Mishra. This is the youngest grandmaster of all time, Abhimanyu. He's probably now 13 or 14 years old. He's 100 points below Pragg. But I mean, he's doing his best. I think he's a couple years younger as well. This one was a semi-Slav by black. Pragg plays bishop d3, so he doesn't play knight c3, which is the traditional semi-Slav. And we get a very imbalanced position very early, as Pragg just plays his queen out and moves in the middle. So he doesn't even develop the bishop or the knight. Now, Abhimanyu's incredibly well prepared, so he begins counterattacking very fast. Bishop g5, queen c7, h3, and now danger levels h6. If you take on g4, take on g5. Black just gets a good bishop pair here. This is no reason really for white to do this. Knight goes back to f6, and knight c3. So, white is ever so slightly better because all of white's pieces are playing. Black is sort of stuck. Like, black needs to find a way to untangle. Abhimanyu is still playing the best moves. It seems like he's prepared in this line. Whether or not, I don't know if he knows all the theory up to this point or if he's just playing the best moves. The point is that after rook d1, black will now take, and now the knight is arriving in the middle. So this was black's entire idea. Actually, if anybody's won this opening battle, it's Abhimanyu. He is slightly better here on move 16, 17. So what does Pragg have to do? He decides to give away his light-squared bishop, and with the intention of playing knight to b5. That was his intention. Now, what's funny is that queen d1, black could play bishop c5, attacking the rook. And I don't really know what Pragg's intention here was. For example, rook d2, the bishop is hanging. So if you take on e5, queen e5, and then rook d2, all right, I mean, this rook is kind of in a strange spot. Normally the queen is there and the rook is behind it. I mean, I don't know, maybe black can even play something like knight g3 here because of this pin. I don't think white is losing, but it's a tough position. Instead of that, Abhimanyu makes a bit of a strange choice here and makes this trade, but more than that, allows himself to be forked. I don't know. On the one hand, it's like, okay, well, if you don't let yourself get forked, you know, here comes e5, which is really strong. Point is that bishop takes e5 runs into this hilarious tactic. And if bishop takes c3, I can take on h5. And if you take on b2, for example, oops. Is this not the most tragic trapping of a queen you've ever seen in your life? So instead of that, Abhimanyu decides, I'm going to sacrifice my queen for a rook and a knight. And Pragg here has to convert. He's got to convert the queen versus rook and piece position, right? He does that with queen d7. Look at that. Giving up this rook. When you have a queen for pieces, sometimes keeping all the material on the board with moves like rook e1 is actually not that good. Because the relative value of that rook is very low. The relative value of a queen infiltrating and taking everything and breaking up pawns, the queen is now worth more than 9 points. It's like an 11-point piece. Terrifying, right? Whereas this bishop is very well worth, similar to this rook. If that rook were down here, it would be a different story. So the queen needs to break apart structure and cause chaos. That is why Pragg plays queen d7. That's also why black doesn't take the rook. And now rook e1, knight f4, and you'll notice everything in the black position is solid. Everything in the black's position makes sense. Everything is defended. How do you break apart something that you can't break apart? It's an unsolvable riddle. And now, here, Abhimanyu should have even played c5, c4. But instead of that, he couldn't resist and went for 2 bishops. And he basically said, all right, my 2 bishops are good. Here's the thing. When the queen battles an army, it wants to remove pieces. Trades oftentimes will help the queen. Not all trades, but the queen will get very strong. And now, Pragg has to use his pawns. That's going to be the tipping point of the position. He's got to create weaknesses. All right, some weaknesses have been created, right? He's attacking on the b file. Oh, that looks real nice. And it's just really hard to defend against the queen. He doesn't even take on b7 because there would have been rook b8, pinning the queen to the rook. Very slowly marches forward, takes on b7. Another trade has occurred, which obviously helps the queen. And as long as white does not get checkmated or lose the queen, that a-pawn will be the difference maker. So that a-pawn makes it all the way down to a7. Black is now completely paralyzed. But the only thing black is relying on here is a fortress. So still hoping that maybe there's a way to defend the position, and there's no way in for white. And it very well could be. It very well could be. I mean, Pragg is trying his best. Like, how do you get rid of the black pieces? Everything in black's position is defended, right? So what is Pragg going to do? He's going to try to get down to queen versus rook. Queen c5. Now the rook and the bishop are hanging. And he can't queen, but more pieces have been removed from the board, right? He's harassing him. Harassing. But, all right, I mean, very nice defense. Look at this, bishop d5. If queen takes d5, he's arguing this is a draw, right? He's arguing this is a draw. That's basically what he's saying. He's saying the rook in 3 versus queen in 2 is a fortress. So Abhimanyu's not going anywhere. World's youngest grandmaster for a reason. But Pragg decides to make a decoy queen sack. And now he wins f7. And this is what he needs. I told you, the queen likes to cause chaos. Now that black's pieces are scattered all over the board, it's going to come down to checks. He picks up the bishop, and this is not a fortress. A fortress is when a queen and a king cannot break through to the other king and rook. This is not that. Because what happens here is black slowly gets booted around. The white king gets as close as possible, right? And now black is stuck. Rook e5, queen f6, and if rook f5, this is mate. So queen f6 check on move 79, and Abhimanyu resigned. Stockfish might have been able to hold that with black. Abhimanyu's a human being. So another win by Pragg. We're now seeing different elements of his game, right? Not just ruthless Sicilian attacks, not just pawn sacrifices and playing on the initiative. Long-term pressure, endurance. This next game, this is, and again, you see his opponents are getting stronger and stronger. This is the penultimate round. This is against Matthew Cornet. This is another French player taking over for the defeated Pierre. One of France's strongest players. I mean, maybe top 5, top 6. And this time, Pragg goes for a main line. You'll notice that against Abhimanyu, we didn't have an opportunity for that because we had d4, d5. Against Cornet, we have this, and Pragg's like, all right, go for a Nimso. And Pragg goes for an interesting setup here. He plays e3, bishop d2. This is a setup that white delays the development of the kingside pieces in order to take back on c3 with the bishop. So white gets us locked center, right? Queen c2, Pragg loves that queen c2. I mean, he loves it, right? Rook e8, he did it against Pierre. He did it against Abhimanyu. a3, bishop f5, bishop back to f8. Because again, black's entire idea of the Nimzo is to take, but not if that means, right? So, knight g5. Now, this actually happened recently, and I think it was the Levon versus Yesipenko game. It was very similar in the Grand Prix. Do you remember that? Well, Pragg's like, oh, you made a weakness? This is something we like to call a hook. So that's a pawn in front of your king that can be a target for my attack. Hello. Knight, and now long castles. Black is basically saying he's completely unafraid. Like, white is about to play h5. The only reason black cannot play h5 is because I can probably sack, take this, play like g4. I mean, just rip open the board. By the way, I might be able to play g4 even now. And if you take with the knight, I mean, are you ready to defend this on the g file? Are you ready to defend this attack? Right? Like, you're not. So, black plays knight g4, physically preventing g4, and f3 is dumb because you lose this. So what does Pragg do? Sacks the knight. Not only does he sack the knight, he also sacks a pawn with a fork. And removing this bishop is very important. That's a very important attacking piece. So I'm actually not exactly sure why black didn't play knight f2. Probably didn't like h5. I mean, that looks terrifying. You know, for example, if you take on d1, I probably can even take on g6. Knight takes c3, I mean, do you really want to calculate all this? And I don't even have to do this, right? So, king h7, h5. Pragg doesn't even care because, again, this is double check. The game is over. So, Cornet goes back to g8 and tries to block, right? He tries to block everything, says, Pragg, chill out. Listen, man, it's all good. Why are you beating me like I owe you money? Stop it. What does Pragg do? Sometimes the best attack is defense. Rook df1. What's your next move? I'll tell you my next move, okay? My next move is I'm either going to play rook h4, rook h1, mate you. I'm either going to play bishop f5, bishop g4. Maybe I'm going to play... Watch what Pragg plays. This is how good he is. He doesn't play like this whole caveman style. No. Knight e2. Pragg understands that he's not in a rush. What will black ever do to him? Black has two knights that can't approach whatsoever. Black has the world's dumbest bishop, the second dumbest bishop in the world. What is black going to do? Nothing. Knight to g3. Now I will put my rook on h7, and then I will play the knight behind the rook. So I rerouted my knight behind the rook, and now I will take on f5. I'm no longer even down any material. You lash out one time at me. I take... You resign. Pragg beats a 2570 rated GM in 25 moves. I mean, he makes it look unbelievably simple. Like, I honestly, I'm sitting here like, what? How do they just melt? They just melt under the pressure. I mean, it's unbelievable. Good opening prep. Led to a good position. I mean, what to say, right? So now it all comes down to the final round game. Pragg is with the black pieces against D. Gukesh. Now, Gukesh on the Indian rankings is actually higher than Pragg. He's 13 points higher than Pragg. And the craziest thing is, he's actually younger than Pragg. Gukesh is a beast. He is so good. But Pragg is right now getting a lot of the traction. He's getting a lot of the hype. So, I mean, India is just so strong. I mentioned Gukesh, I think, in the earlier part of the video, in the intro. It's a battle of Indian youngsters on board 2 of the Reykjavik Open. Winner takes all. This time, Pragg is on the black side of a Nimso Indian. I mean, when you are 2600, you play the Nimso with white, black, and, you know, just about every color. So e3 castles, and Gukesh doesn't play bishop d2, but instead plays bishop d3. We have d5, and Gukesh also goes for the same structure. Same structure of c, d, e, d, bishop back on d6, and plays b4. The point of b4 is to prevent black from playing the move c5. So what does Pragg do? Plays the move c5. Takes, knight to f3. And basically, white is arguing black has a stupid isolated pawn, and black's position is worse. And black is arguing white is really underestimating my isolated pawn. I'm going to play knight c6, bishop g4. I'm going to get all this dynamic play. At some point, I'll shove this pawn forward, and I'll show you who has the isolated pawn. So let's see what happens. Bishop g4. I'm targeting your knight. I'm going to open up your king. You have to do something about that. Gukesh says, no, I don't. For the first time in this entire video, and actually in this entire tournament, Pragg is worse. Pragg's position is worse than his opponent's, considerably. Pragg is now on the receiving end of what he did to Pierre, okay? Which is 2 bishops staring at your king, and Pragg also is very good. Remember that first round game? When he played king h1, rook g1? something like this, Pragg is on the receiving end of everything he's been dishing out the entire tournament. But sometimes, to really prove that you're a champion, you don't destroy everybody. You walk through fire. You are tested. And let's see if you can make it through to the other side without collapsing. Bishop b5. Bishop b5. This move is attacking the rook and making black really struggle to move here. And now the isolated pawn has fallen. So it's going from bad to worse, as Pragg now, after this mass exchange, has completely lost all of his attacking potential. All of it. I mean, his pieces have been removed. Gukesh is still very much the attacker. Gonna put his rook on g1. What is Pragg gonna do? What can he do here? I mean, honestly, except defend a worse position for 7 hours, right? What's he gonna do? Okay, plays knight b6. Good start, unpinning yourself. Otherwise, you just lose here. I mean, you pin forever, right? So, knight b6. All right, Gukesh plays queen e5. Now, let's not forget, players are obviously lower on time, right? Time is ticking. So, Pragg plays queen d2. As active as possible. White plays f4. Maybe f5, f6 on the cards. Bishop is going to go to this diagonal. Queen e2. Queen e2 is just an annoying move. I don't exactly know what Gukesh wants, so let me just keep my queen over there. Rook c1. Okay, now I'm going to go for this pawn. Now that you've left the pawn there, I'm going to go for it. Gukesh offers a queen trade. Naturally, if you trade queens here, you will just lose the game. So you have to keep... Wait, what? Gotham, you just said... Wait a minute. You just said... Also, isn't this mate? No. That's not mate. Trading queens loses. Unless you win the pawn. So Pragg makes an exception to the rule. Levy, there is no winning of the pawn. Yeah, but this is a horrible rook. So if Pragg can either win a pawn back or make white have the world's most depressed rook, it's not a bad sign. However, if Pragg were to trade queens voluntarily, this is a great rook. Defends everything. So actually, Gukesh doesn't trade queens. Pragg plays h6, setting a little bit of a trap. The trap is that this is a free pawn. And Gukesh takes it. Gukesh is now up 2 pawns. Here's the problem. Remember how the queen, a couple of games ago, had to beat a scattered army of pieces? When the queen is left unchecked, and the position is chaotic, the two most dangerous combinations in chess are queen and knight, because they go rogue. They are able to infiltrate defenses that aren't coordinated. So knight to d5. Check, and look at this. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. That would have never been possible. That is not a free knight. Rook d1, and the bishop can't protect the king anymore. White desperately is hoping for a little fort, but knight e2 is a threat. We have rook f1. Very passive, but probably necessary. But now here comes the queen. Gukesh, cold-blooded, plays the best move, which is just moving his pawn forward. There's no attack. Nothing to fear. Even if Pragg gets everything, there's nothing. Rook d6, a5, rook g6, king h1. Gukesh is playing top engine moves. Evaluation ballooning, +3 advantage. +3 advantage. Can Gukesh hold his nerves? Pragg plays king h7 to make sure the king is completely off the rank. By the way, this is another free pawn. Gukesh can take another free pawn. He chooses to go back to d4. He finally gets fed up with this queen. Pragg keeps the queen on the board. The threat is probably rook takes g2. So right now, if you play a6, rook takes g2, kaboom. If you take this, check, king h1, check, here. Not a draw, but mate. Queen and knight go rogue. They are terrifying together. So he cannot do that. What does he do? He has to prevent queen g4, or does he? Why is queen g4 so scary if there's rook g1? He could play h3, or he could force a queen trade. Why does this force a queen trade? Well, because if you go queen back, I'll maybe play h3, king h2, maybe f5 in the future. So he plays queen e5, queen g4, and rook g1, and we just said there's nothing wrong with this. But there is. It's not knight e2 that kills you, because then there's h3, and you kick out the queen. It's knight d1 that kills you. And now the threat is mate. And it's unstoppable. h3 is met with this, this, this. This is obviously met with either mate in 2 or mate in 1. And that's it. The queen used to stand here and cover that. And Gukesh collapses in a low time situation in a tactical slugfest with less than 1 minute on the clock. And Pragg wins the Reykjavik Open. This is a huge accomplishment. I mean, the more tournaments you win, the better. With this win, Pragg gained 13 rating points, and Gukesh lost a couple. So on the next list, Pragg will now be the 8th highest rated player in all of India. Vishwanathan Anand, Virat Gujarati, Pentala Harikrishna, Arjun Erigaisi, Mr. S.L. Narayanan, Krishnan Sasikiran, who I don't think is that active anymore, Nihal Sarin, and Pragg. We talk about Nihal all the time. One of the best players in the world. All right? Pragg right now is buzzing. And the hype that he is hopefully generating and bringing to India is unbelievable. The Modi, and I know people have conflicting views on Modi. I don't know much about politics in India, so I'm sorry if I trigger anybody. He tweeted about it. When is the last time a president of the United States tweeted about a chess player? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know what countries y'all live in. I don't know. So the whole country of India is buzzing right now, and every victory that Pragg gets is better for everybody. Honestly, it's better for everybody. More eyes on chess means hopefully more funding for all of those players, more initiatives, more programs. So congratulations to Pragg. I wanted to make this video to celebrate him. And we are going to track his accomplishments as he gets better and better. But the same goes for Nihal. The same goes for Gukesh, Erigaisi, you name it. These guys are winning everything, it seems. So I don't know if Pragg is the future world champion or one of those players. But times are bright for Indian chess. Let me know if you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one. Congrats again to Pragg. Get out of here.